All right, let's pick up our vertical webinar series that Doc and I have been going through, and we've now come full circle to real estate. And as always, I like to set the stage for any of our presentations. And why are we here? Why are we talking about real estate? Well, one of the reasons is, it's real simple for me, is bringing awareness that PaperCut fits in all verticals. Both Doc and I have heard it over the years. You know, PaperCut tends to get cornered into a certain vertical. Maybe it's education. But we're here to bring this information to you so that you know that there's opportunities out there that are there, and maybe you're not focusing on, or maybe just didn't know that that our products can fit here. So we're not just going to talk about PaperCut today. We're going to talk about some other products as well that we offer, and hope you enjoy the webinar. So buckle up and let's dive in. But first, like I always do, let's set the stage. This is a very important slide as well, just to let you know as we go throughout the webinar. Let's talk about the types of real estate, and I'm going to tell you why I like to do this very quickly. I like to do this because if you're like me, you want to better understand your customer and who you are calling on. And as you go into real estate offices, knowing what they do and who their customers are, it will definitely help you as well. So let's start with the residential piece of it. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. We know what residential real estate is, and we've provided some information there as to what that is. Commercial, you know, there's a lot of commercial real estate companies out there, and quite frankly, some of those real estate companies coexist with one another. I know here in the Arkansas area where I live, there are large real estate companies that do both residential and commercial. So you might run into that wherever you are or wherever you live, especially larger companies that might span multiple states that do both of those. And then we get into industrial real estate. Quite frankly, I kind of thought that was commercial real estate before I did my research on this, but it's not. It's a little bit different, as you can see. And then, of course, land real estate, vacant land and working farms and ranches. So, again, the four types of real estate, and I think it just gives you a better understanding when you're in talking, like I said, to your customers and knowing what they do. But this is what I like to see, is breaking down the stats and what these look like. So 1.3 million realtors in the U.S. Now, I will say this, I have experience in the real estate industry. Not only was I a realtor for a while, but I have a family that owns a real estate company, and a dad that started it about 30 years ago, and a brother that still owns it. So it's an industry that I'm familiar with, and I can tell you this, that of those 1.3 million realtors, not all of those realtors are working hard and selling houses full-time. They might just have their real estate license hung up at a realtor's office and something that they do on the side. There's a lot of realtors out there, and quite frankly, there's a lot of turnover in that industry either, because it's a difficult industry to survive in. 100% commission, a lot of cold calling, a lot of just knocking on doors, similar to what you do and what all of you did on the phone in the beginnings of your career. But over 86,000 real estate brokerage firms in the U.S., and I'm going to break down on the right here what that means when I say brokerage firm, because if you've ever visited a real estate office, some of this will make sense as to some of the things you've maybe seen in there. But let's go to the right. 65% of realtors are licensed sales agents only. There's a typo there. That's supposed to be licensed. But in other words, they go to real estate school and they get their real estate license, and that's the only license that they ever hold their entire real estate career. That license has to be hung up in a principal broker's office. So 21% of the licensed agents in the U.S. hold principal broker, which is the owner, or executive broker licenses. Every office has to have a principal broker, and it is typically the owner. And it could be two principal brokers, maybe a husband-wife duo or a brother and sister duo, something along those lines. They make all the decisions. They sign all the contracts. They can also have an executive broker, that can take a little bit of that burden off their shoulders and do the same thing. Well, 15% hold associate broker's license. Well, guess what? An associate broker is very similar to just a licensed sales agent. They can't really sign anything, but there's things that they can answer and questions that they can help a licensed agent with in the absence of the principal or executive broker. Most associate brokers are working to earn the executive broker or a principal broker's license and potentially open his or her own real estate company. Let me say one more thing that I don't have on the slide here, and I want you to keep in mind and think about the territories and the areas that you live in. You're going to see small real estate companies that's just one location, two locations maybe. Maybe they have a principal broker and an associate broker, and maybe they have 10 to 15 real estate agents. And then you're going to see larger real estate companies to where our products are going to apply a little bit differently. So some examples, Keller Williams, Century 21, Cry-like Realtors. Of course, I'm speaking from a southern perspective. Living in Arkansas, that's what we have here. These are companies that span multiple states. They have very different programs to buy into, to own one of their franchises, so they operate a little bit differently. So I'm going to kind of address that as we go through the webinar and tie those in as we talk about our products and how they are applicable to the real estate industry. This is not a feature dump on our products today. This is strictly focused on how products such as PaperCut and the 4 pain points that you see with accountability, cost savings, accessibility, and security fit in real estate. So let's talk about that. How does PaperCut fit in the real estate vertical? Well, first and foremost, realtor bill back. You heard Doc and I mention during our legal presentation, one of the main things we talked about was client bill back. Well, guess what? In the real estate industry, these principal brokers, they don't have employees. They do have some employees. They're going to have some administrative staff that they're paying their W-2 employees, right? They pay them a salary. They hold out their taxes. But a realtor is an independent contractor. They are a 1099 employee. And guess what? That 1099 employee can drain a principal broker's pocket dry with pens, paper, notepads, printing and copying costs. There's many things that they could do in that office that cost that broker money. So one of the ways that they can recuperate some of that money is to charge that realtor for their print and copy activity. This is something that we have experience in and have done. So that's under the cost savings pain point. Mobility, accessibility. We're going to talk about mobility here in just a few moments, as well as address a PaperCut 19.0 version update on mobility. Accountability, just straight accountability. Think of those larger real estate firms I mentioned just a few moments ago. If we're talking about a company that spans 5 or 6 different states, well, they're going to have staff. They might even have a headquarters to where they need to better manage their printing and copying for their employees, not just their 1099 licensed agents. Scanning falls under the accessibility as well, and we're going to talk about another 19.0 update with scanning here in just a few moments. But let's get into PaperCut, and let's talk about how this applies to the real estate industry. Well, I mentioned it just a few moments ago, and the pain point is up in the left of the screen, by the way. So from an accountability standpoint, that's what PaperCut's going to give them. You could just strictly talk about accountability, especially with a larger real estate firm. Assume if they've got a lot of staff, not just realtors, but a lot of staff as well, they probably have a lot of unnecessary printing and copying, etc. And PaperCut can help them manage that. Easy to create reports, auto-generated reports, and, of course, bill back that I'm going to talk about here in just a few moments. And, again, some more examples of some reports. Rules-based routing, let's talk about cost savings. I know for me, whenever I was in the real estate business, I had my own printer on my desk. A lot of realtors will do that. And to back up just a little bit, most realtors have to provide their own equipment, their laptop, their cell phones, their iPads, their printers if they want one. But you know what? If it's a company-provided printer, which I do know that some offices do that, it's going to be more cost-effective, as you well know, for them to print to one of your devices. So we can use that as a talk track and a selling tool to show them that it is more cost-effective. How much are they spending on jobs being sent to a single-function printer versus your multifunction device? We can implement rules and pop-ups that show them, hey, it's more cost-effective to print to this device, because guess what? If we're charging them back, I can assure you they're going to want to print to the most cost-effective device. So, again, rules-based routing, cost savings. Realtor bill back, like I mentioned just a few moments ago. We can do realtor bill back just like we do in the legal industry for client matter. In other words, when, let's say, Casey Cobb, myself, I log into my computer and go to print something, Well, the owner or whomever, the admin there, I'm tripping over my words, the admin there will be able to generate a report, let's say at the end of every month, and see how much I printed in black and white versus color, paper size, or quite frankly, however they want to charge that realtor back. I'm going to tell you what it's going to do, and I'm going to give you an example. Every realtor that shows houses, they go out to a multi-list system. They log into that multi-list system, okay? They locate the house that they want to show, and it's going to have a color picture of that house in the top left-hand corner, assuming they haven't changed it, the way it looks. It's going to have all of the details on that house. Well, what does that realtor do? File print, file print, file print, and guess what else they do? They print it in color. And you know PaperCut's going to pick it up in color if there's any color on the page. Well, do they really need a picture of the house? Probably not. But I'm telling you, when I used to show houses, I might have 10 of those that I printed off, and maybe I made a mistake, and that buyer didn't want to see 4 of those houses. They wanted to see these other 4, and now I'm reprinting other stuff. There's a lot of wasted print in the real estate vertical, I promise you. And bill back is a way that principal brokers can get their realtors to think before they print, knowing they're going to be charged for that printing activity. Find me printing, we all know about this. It makes it easy. I think of a large real estate company. A lot of real estate companies are only going to have 1 or 2 copy machines, and that's fine. But you get into a large real estate company that has 5 or 6 locations, they might want the ability to release those jobs at whichever device they choose, especially if they have multiple devices within a building. Keep in mind, a large real estate company is going to have a lot of realtors there, and they're printing all the time, so it's easy if they walk up to one device that's occupied, they can go to another one. Mobility printing. Let's talk about this for just a few moments, and we've addressed mobility printing in pretty much all of our vertical presentations that we've done, but it really takes on a great fit for the real estate vertical. Why? Well, they buy their own equipment for one, okay? PaperCut's mobility printing is going to enable them to easily join the network or easily be able to print from their device. You can see at the bottom there any device as shown below, as I have on the second bullet point. So whether it's a Mac, Windows, Android device, Chromebook, an iPad, an iPhone, it doesn't matter what it is. We can pre-configure and set mobility printing up where that realtor can easily register themselves, and then they will have access to whichever devices that that company wants to give them access to. That's when we get into the self-setup and the printer discovery. So in a version 19.0 update, and this is huge, if it applies, it might not. It just depends on the way the real estate company's set up. But we now have the ability to bill back at the multifunction device. So what does that mean? Well, if I'm printing from my iPhone or my iPad, for example, and through PaperCut's mobility printing, it's not going to allow me to select the client or whatever to bill back to. And again, this might not apply exactly to real estate, but it could depending on the size of the company. But once that user goes and releases that job at the copy machine, they'll see a little error message at the bottom, and it will tell them to select that, and they'll be allowed to select their account. Or maybe it's an administrator, an admin that works at the real estate company, and they need to bill something back to a certain realtor that they printed on their behalf, okay? So they could do that and choose the correct account. Let's keep going. Let's talk about scanning. I mentioned scanning earlier. And scanning is very important in the real estate industry. As even when I was in it years ago, we scanned an email a lot, okay? So this is something that's important. So I want to talk about integrated scanning for just a moment and make sure we all understand what that is. So integrated scanning is compatible with a lot of the different brands that you offer, okay? Not all of them, but a lot of them. And basically what it means is once you log into the copy machine, as you can see to the right, it presents an easier to look at screen or to navigate through. So when you log in, it shows print release, device functions. That means if you want to copy something, or scanning. So once you select scanning, what could that person see? Well, scan to email, scan to a folder, scan to cloud, Dropbox, Box, OneDrive, Google Drive. There's many of those. Evernote now, P-Cloud. Those are a couple that have been added in version 19.0. But So anyway, so talking about scanning is important because realtors scan a lot. They scan a lot to their principal broker. But we can track and monitor those scans. But again, it's all about the workflow. Well, let's look at the 19.0 update there. Cloud OCR. So we now have Cloud OCR scanning that works in conjunction with the integrated scanning. So we're simply turning that PDF into a text searchable document. So they might need to scan something to a certain folder or whatever. Maybe at this company, they have to scan something to a certain folder for all of their contracts, all of their real estate contracts, so their admin or a principal broker can go search specific information. So we're very excited about this, but again, just released in version 19.0 last week. So scanning is something that you definitely want to talk about, but let's keep going with scanning. We're not through. Let's talk about side capture. Some of you on the call might not have known that we do sell a document capture software and side capture. So you're thinking, where does that fit? Because you just told me PaperCut does scanning. We can scan to email. We can scan to folders. You told me about Cloud OCR scanning. So what side capture is going to do, it's going to take it to a whole nother level. So we're talking now about scanning, indexing, and being able to put that document maybe into a document management product or Microsoft SharePoint. So where do I think of this product being used? Large real estate companies, chains, real estate chains such as Keller Williams, Crye-Leike Realtor, Century 21, where they're going to have a headquarters location. It's going to be important that they get those documents where they need to be. So keep this product in mind if you're calling on one of those large outfits like that this is possibly something they're going to need because they're going to be handling a lot of documents. Secure print release, obviously here we are. We're on the last pain point. We're about to wrap up, so stay with me. So anybody that is printing something that has an individual's name on it that's not theirs, address, birth date, whatever that might be, they are responsible for security. If they're printing documents that are just sitting on a copy machine and they're not securely releasing them, they run the risk of getting in trouble, obviously, if information got out. I don't really envision that happening necessarily at a real estate company, but you just never know when someone might steal someone's identity. As always, brand neutral, platform neutral, server or direct setup. One thing I'm very excited to talk about today, for some of you on the call who might not be aware, you would have heard this in last month's presentations if you were on them, is the ACDI Print Hub device. So we now have a Linux-based server, as you see here, easy to connect and set up. So this is great for real estate offices, shared office spaces, small to medium businesses that do not have a network in place, or maybe they don't have an IT personnel presence. I promise you, from my perspective, I've heard it time and time again as you get on a call with a small law office or a shared office or real estate, they just don't have the infrastructure or the IT personnel to management. Guess what? They're looking to you or us to do it. So we can provide this print hub. We will, install PaperCut on it for you and the customer before it leaves our office, and then we'll configure it once everything is